Okay, so today I am going to just be talking about our new water quality program that I've been working on developing at VI. VI is Wastewater Alternatives and Innovations. That is a relatively young local nonprofit with the three of us on the call, and then our executive director, Stuart Coleman, who'll be joining in a little bit. So I'm going to talk about our some new outreach materials that we've been generating about water quality outreach, specifically with respect to cesspools and sewage pollution. We also have a new public health data tool that we want to launch and ask also for your help in getting the word out about it. And finally, I'm going to be diving into some science on the second half of the presentation and talking about some of the research that I am ramping up to do with the University of Hawaii for my PhD. So just a quick outline, since there's a few topics. I kind of went through this already. Yeah, I'm going to just quickly go over a quick overview of cesspools in Hawaii and water quality. And I know a lot of you guys are already familiar with this, but since we also have some new folks on the call, I'm just going to give a nice quick overview about that. And then we'll go into the water quality program and the research updates. And at the end, time for Q&A. So this infographic kind of shows how cesspools impact water systems in Hawaii. So basically, there's over 88,000 cesspools in Hawaii. And cesspool is essentially a hole in the ground where wastewater from homes and buildings go without any treatment. So basically, it's just a hole with an open bottom, perforated sides where the wastewater can leach out into the soil and also into the groundwater, especially if the groundwater is close to the depth of the cesspool. So since there's no treatment, all kinds of nutrients, pathogens, contaminants can get into the groundwater, especially here in Hawaii, where we have lots of really porous areas, like the lava rock on Big Island and sandy soils near the coast. So this contaminated water can get into the groundwater easily. And then if there are drinking water wells in that region, you can contaminate your drinking water aquifer, which can have, of course, negative impacts on human health if you're drinking contaminated tap water. So that can be things like increased nitrates in your drinking water can be associated with increased rates of colorectal cancer and potentially some other types of cancers as well. And then on the way through the groundwater, it can also reach streams and the coastal ocean. And that's mostly what I'm going to be talking about today. Which is these nutrients and contaminants reaching our coastal ocean ecosystems here in Hawaii, where they can cause imbalances in the ecosystem. It can fuel the growth of invasive algae, lead to degradation of coral reef ecosystems, enhance the prevalence of coral disease, and all kinds of different impacts in those ecosystems. So I'm just going to go through really quickly and show where cesspools are located throughout Hawaii. And also the Department of Health has they have designated priority areas for cesspool conversion, which are also kind of in the process of being updated as we get more and more data. But these are the 2017 priority areas. There are priority 1 areas, which are areas with documented impacts to drinking water or coastal waters or other sensitive waters. There's also priority 2, where there's potential impacts to drinking water, and priority 3, which is potential environmental impact. So on Oahu, you can see that this color coding is going to carry through these next few slides. So red is priority area 1, orange 2, and yellow 3. You can see the 5 priority areas on Oahu, with Kahaluu being priority 1, and then 4 other areas where there are potential impacts to the coastal ecosystems. There's also plenty of cesspools that are not in the priority areas, and those are in the process of being prioritized right now. On Kauai, we have 2 areas that are at risk for drinking water impacts, and 1 area where the environmental impact is more concerning, up in Hana. In Maui, upcountry, there's been some evidence of drinking water contamination in private wells in this upcountry area. And on Big Island, there are coastal impacts in Puako, coastal Kailua Kona, Hilo Bay, and some drinking water impacts in the Kea'au region. Big Island has over half of all the cesspools in Hawaii, so that's actually the region with the most amount of cesspools and they have a lot of documented problems over there, which I'll talk about a little more. Molokai is currently not prioritized, but as you can see, there's plenty of cesspools right along, especially the southern coast. They're right on the water. And that's all a fringing reef ecosystem right there with lots of fish ponds and fish pond restoration efforts. So I think that those coastal cesspools in Molokai are also really concerning and important to take a look at. So with all of these cesspools all over the islands, there's lots of examples of areas where we've measured wastewater contamination into the ocean. So I'm just going to share a couple of those real quick. The first one is Kahaluu, which is in Kaneohe Bay area on the east side of Oahu. This is an area that's designated as a priority 1 area. So we know that there's wastewater contamination happening there. The plot that I'm showing is a fecal indicator bacteria plot. So these are from water samples where citizen scientists have been going out since 2018 every 2 weeks and taking water samples at Kahaluu. And the red dotted line is the threshold for where the Department of Health would close a beach if they measured concentrations that high. So this is work that's being done by the Surfrider Foundation Blue Water Task Force. So we don't have authority to close beaches and tell people, you know, you can't go in, but we do like to share these results as widely as we can and make sure that people know that there is a lot of fecal indicator bacteria being measured consistently at this location. Almost every sample is above that threshold. This is an important area because in Kaneohe Bay, there's really minimal circulation. So the wastewater that comes in from the watersheds there can really hang around for a long time. And there's this is a really important nearshore coral reef habitat with patch reefs and nursery habitat for a lot of different species. It's also used for fishing and cultural activities. And then in Puako, we have Stephen Colbert on the call, who's done a lot of work in this region. This is just a really cool visual that you can see how quickly wastewater makes its way from coastal cesspools in the Puako region of Big Island onto the reef. You can see on this map on the bottom left that there's a whole lot of cesspools right along the edge of the coast here. And then there's a really vibrant coral reef ecosystem. Well, used to be vibrant, has been degrading right in front of this neighborhood. And some of their dye tracer studies have shown that after a toilet flush, it can take as little as 6 hours for the wastewater to reach the reef. So you really know that there's no microbial breakdowns, no treatment going on before it gets into that reef ecosystem. So there's also enhanced coral disease that has been observed in that area. So now that you have a little bit of a background about what the wastewater pollution problem looks like in Hawaii, I just wanted to share some of the new materials that Vi has been developing to help kind of get the word out. Because, you know, a lot of times when you talk to people, like Gisela was saying, like a lot of people just don't know about this stuff. So even, you know, surfers and people who use the ocean a lot, many times aren't really aware about the cesspool problem and all the wastewater pollution that is occurring. So we developed a part of our website that is dedicated to water quality. So it does have a focus on sewage contamination from cesspools, but we also talk about other types of land-based pollution. And, you know, we really want to acknowledge that this is a you know, multi-pronged problem. It's not just wastewater, but there's also erosion and sedimentation and stormwater runoff and all kinds of different impacts to the system. So in addition to the kind of informational side of things, we have a new tool where folks can go if you feel like you have gotten sick after you went swimming, or if you got an infection or something like that, you can go and report it on our website, and we'll be tracking that information. And this is really cool because there's not a whole lot of information about when people get sick after swimming, because it's not something that you normally go to a doctor and say that you're really sick. You usually just get sick to your stomach or get a sinus infection or get some kind of minor thing that you get over quickly. So there's not great data. So this is we're hoping to start collecting some public health data and seeing where people are getting sick most frequently. So this is an example of what it looks like, but actually I will go ahead and jump over to the website itself so I can show you guys what it looks like online. So here is our website. Now this new water quality tab is here. You can just click on that. And you can see here there's different types of water pollution sources that you can drop down and read about. So you can learn about wastewater and sewage, invasive animals, erosion, plant and animal agriculture, and stormwater impacts. There's also some links within the text that'll take you to like more detailed handouts, and I'll show you guys those in just a minute. This button right here will take you to our waterborne illness and infection tracker. So you can just click right on there. It's called Sea-Sick. I'm just trying to be a little punny. And you can just fill in the information of where you were swimming, what island you were on, what day it happened on, and what kind of symptoms you had. So we're hoping to start really getting the word out that this tool is here and start trying to collect some reports. And then we can share on social media too. When people are getting sick at a certain place, we can let people know. This is just a good outreach tool, and also we're hoping to collect some kind of voluntarily reported public health data. Okay, so I'm going to jump back over to the presentation. One sec. All right, so we've also been working with the public health department at University of Hawaii, and we've had a couple interns that have joined us over the last 6 months or so to help with creating some outreach materials. So these are, I just wanted to give a shout out to our 2 interns, Ray and Ali, who have helped out a lot, both with the handout development and also with the webpage development. So there are a packet of, there is a packet, sorry, of handouts that are available for download on the website. And you can also view them, like I was saying, from following links within the text. And this is going to be a little busy, but I'm just going to show you what the handouts look like. So we have Water Quality 101, which is showing the basics of sewage pollution from cesspools, the basics of land-based pollution, and the different types of pollution. We also have a more sciencey handout that is called Who's in the Water, and that's referring to all the different types of microbes and pathogens associated with wastewater pollution that you might find in contaminated water. So the first page of that one is talking about fecal indicator bacteria, what that means, how people test for them. And then the second page is, it's kind of hard to see, so I'll zoom in a little bit, but talking about different types of pathogens that you may encounter in sewage contaminated water. So that includes parasites or pathogenic bacteria and viruses such as enteroviruses and noroviruses that cause the most common things like the gastrointestinal illnesses. So you can see, I'm sorry, it's a little bit blurry, but you can see the different types of organism or little microbes that you might run into in the water with their picture and what kind of symptoms are associated with that type of microbe or pathogen. So these are handouts that are basically designed for, like, if we, in the before the pandemic, where we have more like outreach events and there's booths and things, we would be able to like hand these out, or also totally welcome to download them, print them out, hand them out at events. We just really want to get the word out and like help educate people about these topics. This is the last handout about cesspools and drinking water. So it's talking mostly about nitrate contamination and showing where the risk areas for drinking water contamination are in Hawaii. It also has a case study about Long Island. And Long Island is a place that, weirdly enough, has a very similar cesspool problem to Hawaii. And they have documented increased nitrate levels in their groundwater and have also started seeing increased cancer rates associated with that. So, we don't want to be Long Island, right? We are hoping to get ahead of the problem before we, really start seeing these like long-term health impacts in the community, if possible. So I've been doing a little bit of just researching into the nitrate concentrations in our municipal water. So Board of Water Supply, if you live on Oahu, you probably get a little report every year. And I think the other counties do this too, where Board of Water Supply does a bunch of testing and on your water. They test for a variety of different contaminants and send you a report once a year. Most municipal wells show nitrate concentrations that are below the 4 milligrams per liter that would start to cause some of the cancer correlations. But primarily what we're going to be worried about is private wells. Municipal wells tend to be a little bit more Melka. So they're not really in the region where cesspools are like directly impacting. They're also really deep. Whereas private wells tend to be shallower. They're often even on the same property as an on-site disposal system. So that's where like the real concern comes in for contaminated drinking water. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about our Clean Water Hui, which is our new volunteer program with VI. So we've definitely had lots of volunteers come through and help us with different projects, but we're also trying to get a more organized Hui together that is basically a group of folks on each island where there are cesspools. So that's Kauai, Oahu, Molokai, Maui, and Big Island. So we want to get some folks who are, volunteers on each island who are really willing to be, kind of the eyes and ears on the ground about wastewater issues, that can be like staying in touch with local citizen science groups and, noticing when there's spills or brownwater events or algae blooms or anything that kind of is out of the ordinary in the, locally in the area. And we can stay on top of everything, make sure we're getting outreach out to the people who need it in all these different areas. And we're also looking for, folks to help us submit testimony for pro-cesspool conversion legislation that's going to be moving through the legislative process this session. There could also be some potential field opportunities in the future. So if any of you guys are interested or anyone who would be a good fit for this type of volunteer position, they can email info@vicleanwater.org. Sorry. And yeah, we really appreciate any leads, and we're looking for folks to help us out with this initiative. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit now and talk about some collaborative research that I'm ramping up with at University of Hawaii, Pakayus, and the Seafoam Research Group, which is Margaret McManus's lab. I've worked for Margaret for about 9 years as a oceanographic technician, and I am now in her lab as well as a PhD student. So I'm just getting started, but I just wanted to share with you what we're going to be working on this year. So basically, we're going to be looking at some new detection methods for wastewater in the environment. And we're also really interested in integrating the physical oceanography component into our understanding of how wastewater interacts with ecosystems. So our main questions are, is there a way to monitor wastewater inputs that can capture tidal cycles and storm events, as opposed to bottle sampling where you just capture a moment in time? Can we see wastewater pollution data in real time, instead of a delay while all the water samples are being processed? And then the other main driving question is, once wastewater enters an ecosystem, how long does it interact with the nearshore environment, and what role do currents, waves, wind, and tides play? So starting out with the first question, that's mostly what I'm going to focus on right now. This is an example of a type of instrument that you can put into the water and leave there for a while. So it's something that measures and collects data in situ in the reef environment. This is called a fluorometer. So basically how a fluorometer works is you can see this green and blue little molecule here. In this example, it's chlorophyll. And the fluorometer will send out a pulse of light that will excite an electron on the chlorophyll molecule. And this is specific to different types of molecules. So it'll just excite chlorophyll, and the electron will become excited, and then it will immediately emit a different wavelength of light, and the fluorometer can measure that. So basically it's using individual molecules' fluorescent properties to detect when they're there. So it's super cool technology. We use this a lot to measure chlorophyll and water clarity and that kind of thing. And now I'm interested in using it to measure wastewater. So I got inspired to look into this after I read this study and talked to a professor in San Diego about how they've used fluorescence to detect wastewater in a San Diego stream. Basically, this little fluorometer you can see here installed in the stream was downstream of areas that were potential pollution impacts. And they did a lot of bench testing in the lab and found that they could get fluorescence results in blue here from the sensor that tracked really well with fecal indicator bacteria, in this case, E. coli. They also, you can plot the fluorescence results in this kind of like color plot here, and you can see this yellow signal right here at the bottom indicating the presence of wastewater. Basically, the microbes that are in wastewater fluoresce at a certain, they tend to fluoresce at a certain emission and excitation wavelengths. And then there's also optical brighteners. So those are things like, you know, if you look at laundry detergent, it looks kind of like neon purple. So that's like an optical brightener in the detergent. And that's something that's also only found in wastewater. So they had this fluorometer deployed in the creek during a storm event in February. And you guys, this is a little bit of a busy plot, but you can just focus on these purple ones. So basically, this first one shows a spike in caffeine when wastewater pollution entered the stream. And this is over the course of about 12 to 24 hours. And this second one shows Enterococci and E. coli. So these are your fecal indicator bacteria, also showing the same spike as caffeine. And here on the bottom right is our fluorescence data. So you see it tracks really nicely with the caffeine. The fecal indicator bacteria stayed high for a little bit longer, but this is an effective method in detecting the spike in wastewater during that storm event. So can we get this fluorescence detection method to work in Hawaii? The first thing that we're going to have to do is our sensors on the way from the factory, and we'll be doing a lot of lab testing with wastewater dilution to get a handle on how it performs in the lab. And then we'll be collaborating with the Pacific Islands Ocean Observing System to do some field testing at locations with known wastewater pollution. So my guess is that we'll probably be most successful by installing these sensors near either stream mouth or groundwater seep, where we expect to see wastewater pollution entering the system. We'll also be doing fecal indicator bacteria and chemical indicator sampling, things like caffeine or ibuprofen, to build a really nice data set that we can correlate to the fluorescence data. This is my coworker installing one of the PACA use sensors over here. And so we have instrumentation available that can also track salinity, temperature, and turbidity, or water clarity. So that will help us kind of round out the physical oceanography and understand what's happening in the system. And the goal of this is really that I'm interested in capturing episodic events, for instance, pollution inputs that maybe only happen during rain events and you might miss if you're just doing bottle samples at a certain time. It might also be able to detect changes in wastewater inputs, for instance, at a low tide versus a high tide. So switching gears a little more, just going to our second question, there's the question of nearshore circulation and how that affects sewage pollution. So this is a little bit further out, but I just kind of wanted to give you guys an idea of what the what the problem is and what the solution might look like for trying to get a better handle on coastal circulation and how it affects wastewater pollution in coral reef ecosystems. So I have here, this is a picture of the north shore of Oahu. So you can see this is a Waialua Haleiwa area up to, here's like Turtle Bay, Kawela, Kahuku, just to orient you guys. So there's a lot of different physical factors that come into play. There are cesspools all along this whole stretch of coast, the entire North Shore. But in Waialua versus in other places, you might have different physical things happening. For instance, Wailua and the Pupukea side both get really extreme seasonal wave action. Like in the winter, you guys know sometimes it's 40 feet. Lots of wave power hitting the reef. However, in Wailua, there's kind of a fringing reef and a calmer lagoon area. Versus in Pupukea, the waves crash right on the beach. So there's a lot more water moving around really close to shore. And then when you move over onto the windward side, you have trade winds coming from the east-northeast and a fringing reef here with moderate wave action that's pretty consistent all year round. So you can imagine that the different kind of physical structure and environmental forcings in these different areas would affect how long wastewater pollution stays in a system and how long it would interact with the nearshore ecosystem. So the way that we're thinking about addressing this is by deploying current meters in a grid so that we can basically model how much water is moving through the system and what is the kind of flushing and the the residence time of water in these nearshore systems. So that's a little bit further out, but it's something that I'm excited about. And it's also a really important piece of information that will help us prioritize cesspool conversions in areas where the wastewater pollution is having more damage on the marine ecosystem. So just wrapping this up, I know I went from, kind of outreach and education to some pretty nerdy science. So just kind of to bring it all together, there's been a lot of really important studies and documentation of wastewater pollution in Hawaii with all these many different research groups, volunteer organizations, and nonprofits. I put the logos of a bunch of the really awesome contributors down on the bottom here. And a lot of these groups use all kinds of different methods, including like different labs at University of Hawaii using different methods. And one thing that I see is really important is that there are some gaps that are identified and need to be addressed. And we also, it would be really beneficial to consolidate all this information that's coming in from all these different sources and share it widely in a, kind of simple, easy to understand way so that people understand the importance of converting their cesspools. And this is helpful for both, just folks who are ocean users who want to know that the water they're swimming in is clean. And it'll also be helpful for counties to prioritize their cesspool conversions and marine managers to help integrate land-based pollution metrics into their plans and conservation goals. So that is what I have for today. And I'm happy to take any questions and chat about any of that. So thank you. Thanks, guys. Does anybody have any questions or comments or suggestions?
Christina, how are you?
Yes.
Is there a form for people who are interested in the volunteer program that you're trying to make?
We don't actually have a form right now, but that's a great idea. We could just make a quick Google form that people could fill out and share that with you guys.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so being a resident of Kahaluu, I wasn't surprised that we have a lot of wastewater contamination or cesspool impacts, but I was surprised at how often the levels, like that previous graph you showed, how often the levels actually reach the threshold of like what would require a closure of the beach. But I think you said something like they don't, like none of those beaches were actually closed because like whoever was sampling, I don't know if it was a Surfrider that was in charge of sampling. I just saw Surfrider on there, but they didn't have the authority to close the beaches. So I'm wondering, is there any plans or talk about, these local community groups or citizens that's doing the water sampling to collaborate with DOH or provide to collaborate with DOH so that, hey, like we took water quality sampling here, like these are like dangerous levels, you should close the beaches. So just kind of curious to see if there's any talk about that in the future, because that seems kind of crazy. Like, okay, there's people doing water sampling, it's like contaminated, it's not safe, but yet they're not closing the beaches. So yeah, just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there is definitely kind of a long-term project between Blue Water Task Force and Surfrider Foundation and the Department of Health. And I think Kim can also speak to this a lot with trying to get um, citizen science data kind of up to par and accepted in the regulatory world. So that's definitely a challenge. We have been working for a long time on creating a QAP, which would, really clearly spell out the methods and quality control procedures that would then allow our data to be utilized by Department of Health. So, yeah, it is in the works. It's also really challenging. Kim has done an amazing job of with Huio Kawaiʻola, getting their QAP all set up and getting that data to a really high standard. So yeah, it can be done. And I know folks at Surfrider are working on it as well.
Christina. Hi, this is
I have a
Dan
question.
talking.
Hi, this is Gisela speaking through a sign language interpreter. And I'm really curious about tracking which beaches have high pollution, especially after rain. I would love to see tracking, like for example, with the Surfline app. I typically use that to monitor surfing information, and I would love to see that incorporated in a one-stop app where we can incorporate that information, where surfers could just look at that one app to see the reports and also see how polluted the beaches are, so we can maybe avoid it no matter how good the waves are. So it would be nice to see a one-stop all-inclusive app, and I'm sure that there's some of that information out there, but just finding it more accessible, and then also being able to report health information for surfers. I think there's a lot of us who research what different apps to use, but it would be fantastic to have one app where those reports can be made, and maybe that's a future project, but it'd be so great to see all of that information incorporated into one place.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great comment. And I think that, I do see sometimes on Surfline, the Surfline apps that they have, they'll say when there's a groundwater advisory, but they're definitely not using all the different types of data that are coming in from all these citizen science groups and everything. So it would be really cool to get things more integrated. And yeah, when you check the surf report, if there's a recent water quality problem site that came up, that they would just say like, oh, by the way, 2 days ago, this was had high bacteria. So then you would know without having to check a whole bunch of sites. So yeah, thank you for that comment. I hadn't thought about like creating an app or anything like that, but it's a good idea. I see Stuart, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry to join late. I had a doctor's appointment, as you know, and couldn't get out earlier. About the testing and the water quality issue regarding the groundwater advisories. Right now, Hawaii is one of very few states in the country, I don't know of any others, that they stop testing altogether during major rain events. And their logic is, oh, well, we know it's dirty and everyone knows it's dirty, so we don't need to test during that time. And if we test and it's really dirty, we have to continue testing it. And the logic just does not add up, because at the end of the year, they put together their report, and because they didn't test when it was dirty, they say, oh yeah, we only had 2 hits when it was above for the whole year. So it's just dishonest. We don't have enough data to say how bad the water quality is for surfers, swimmers, divers, fishermen, and it can get really bad during this last rain event that we have. So we're really pushing hard to make sure that and the EPA is also very trying to push the Department of Health, saying you need to test during rain events. You can declare groundwater advisory, but that doesn't mean you can suspend testing. So there was a bill last year, if you're interested, it'll be resubmitted this year. I don't know if it'll have the same number, but if you want to look up SB 350 at capital.hawaii.gov, we can put that in the chat, or it's live streaming. look that bill up, because we definitely need to pass that. We need to make sure that the Department of Health is testing on a regular basis, especially during groundwater advisory.
Yeah, thank you. And that's definitely something you can keep an eye out. We'll be sharing action alerts, and also Surfrider will be sharing action alerts to submit testimony about that bill as it moves through legislative session this season. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Follow us on Instagram, follow Surfrider on Instagram, and you'll see when these action alerts come up and you can submit testimony. If you don't know how to submit testimony, you can also email us. I can show you how to do it, how to get an account, how to sign up. It's really easy. And yeah, it's actually one of the few things in the Hawaii government website structure that actually works really well. So very, very easy to submit testimony and participate. Dan, did you have a question earlier?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Christy.
Hi.
I just wanted to, I was basically going to say exactly what Stu just said. So thanks, Stu. I won't repeat it. And yeah, please, support this bill to help DOH do their job. I guess I can add one thing. The Blue Water Task Force currently does not sample in Kahaluu because we just don't have that capacity to, we don't have any volunteers that live there that are able to sample there. So if there's anybody in Kahaluu or that area that would like to help us out, we sample every other Saturday. Every other Sunday morning. And we could basically be able to just hand it off to somebody in Kaneohe and the sample will get to the lab. So that is an option because we don't have coverage on that side of the island yet. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Dan. I didn't realize that the Kahaluu site dropped off. So yeah, I'll definitely keep an eye out too for volunteers over there. Ted, I think you're next.
Yes, thank you. I definitely share the concern that has been expressed, Stuart and others, about having better water quality monitoring. A couple things we could do about that. One is with regard to the Blue Water Task Force. We've been hearing now for at least 5 years that there's a QAPP coming, and it would be really great. I don't know if there's anything I could do, if there's anything that others can do to get that done, because I know it was something that Raphael was working on before he left Surfrider. So it's been a long time. And so you're left without really, with results that are not beyond dispute. And that's unfortunate. The other thing is in Senate Bill, and I wrote down House Bill, but it's Senate Bill 350, which made a lot of progress last year. But did not pass ultimately. I wonder if there's anything in there about funding, because I know from representing the Department of Health that they only have like 6 people doing monitoring for the whole state, which is ridiculous. And unless they get a lot more monitors when they test after a storm event, that means they're testing there at the beaches that have those, and they're not testing other places. So I think there could be better utilization of the monitoring they have, but they need more people, clearly. So it would be good if, while that bill is being considered this year, is if funding is also part of that, and strings attached to how you do it. So those are 2 things you could do to get better beach monitoring, which I totally agree we need. And when I say beach monitoring, I guess I mean water quality monitoring. It's not necessarily beaches.
That's a great point about the funding. I know that's been a sticking point for the Department of Health with being able to, improve things. So yeah, we can definitely check the language and make sure that they're requesting some funds that would support the kind of more, scientific ideological side of, wanting to get all the data.
And let me add, I have now looked at the bill, and it did have appropriation in it last year. So
okay,
not precluded. You can amend.
Kim?
Speaking to that one point, one thing to try to support the Department of Health on is that it's not just that they don't have the money sometimes, it's that the positions are hard to fill. It's really hard to keep and retain employees for all kinds of reasons. It's hard to work for the Department of Health in the state, I think. And specifically, if you're interested in developing an app, you would need to be able to have the data released in some sort of reasonable amount of time after they take the samples. And right now they're missing a quality assurance officer. So without a QA officer, just like if a sampling group doesn't have a QA officer to go through and make sure the data is valid, they won't be able to publish the data, and they'll only have kind of approximate data, and they generally don't release that. So supporting them to try to get that next QA position in place would be a huge step, and it is the holding for a couple of projects right now. So that's that. And then the other point was on storm sampling, and I just wanted to share that the Hui is working to try to find a volunteer group called, we're calling it the Stormtroopers, which we've talked about the Stormtroopers forever, but in this case, we think that using drone imagery is probably the best approach. And we're looking for volunteer drone operators on, and like basically a drone Hui per island in important places, because understanding the extent and the direction of the plumes has proved to be a lot more important sometimes after the storms, and identifying source on a broad scale. So especially if on Maui, which is where we're going to debut this, in Kihei, if you know drone operators, that's sort of one of the directions we're going to take. We've really struggled to do good storm sampling ourselves. Just mobilizing volunteers and equipment after storms has just been challenging, and that's the time you need it most. But it's also the time that the bridges fail and the water's high and things like that. So yeah, would be happy to collaborate to try to figure out really robust systems that can be put in place on each island that would allow us to track important swimming places in particular, to figure out how many days after an event is it then safe to swim.
That's super interesting. Like, thanks for the idea about the drone army. That I think that's a great idea. Yeah, definitely would love to talk about that more. And yeah, that's I do see tons of people flying drones all the time, and people seem to love it. So hopefully that's like an attractive volunteer position. Yeah, I really like that idea. That's
everything. It's the organization. So we'll see if we can get the nuts and bolts of it down to make it happen. So you can we're thinking about phone trees. Like that's where we're sort of at. Like, how do you deploy an army at the right time after a storm? Right. And I personally spend all my time after storms on Facebook on the big lists, more North Shore Community Hub, my Kailua, the Maui 24/7. And I'm just perusing, looking for storm photos. And then if it was just somebody, not just me doing that, that would be awesome. I collect them and I spend a lot of time doing it, but I would love a system for that too, because you can get a lot from communities just posting on Facebook. So
cool. Thank you.
I think we could definitely, I'll just jump in real quick, work on a campaign to do that, because I think if we do it on social media and it's coordinated and we have a plan, people do love kind of sharing their drone footage, and if we can coordinate it with some of Surfrider's water quality testing, that could be really, I think people would appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And then we just have a couple minutes left, so I'm just gonna make sure we get to Stephen's question too.
Yeah, fantastic presentation. Really interesting. And I really like to see the work that you're right now doing on trying to find those short period inputs of sewage, because I think that's a real key piece of information we're missing. There's, whether it's at low tides that are happening in the middle of the night when no one's sampling, it's still having an impact that spreads out in our coastal waters. So I think that's exciting research. One of the comments I wanted to make about the Department of Health sampling is where they sample in an area is not necessarily the most impacted point in that nearshore region. I've been part of the cesspool replacement group, nearshore water quality sampling. The report's being submitted this session. And we did, high resolution sampling along the shoreline, sometimes overlapping with DOH sampling points, and often we found high rates of indicators of sewage that were nearby where they were sampling, but not necessarily where they were sampling. So I think there's some spatial variability that needs to be considered when looking at that DOH data.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, definitely will take that into account when planning studies and things too. And it's good to be aware of it when looking at at these long-term data sets. Thinking about like where are they specifically sampling and under what conditions. And yeah, it's all really important things to keep in mind when trying to interpret this data. So yeah, thanks for that. All right, well, it's 4 o'clock right now, so we're just at the end of the meeting. Does anyone have any final comments?
I'd like to add something, Christy.
Sure.
Regarding the Blue Water Task Force QAP, it has been submitted many months ago, and per Kim's comment, it has not been reviewed at DOH because they don't have a QC officer. So they said, yep, we got it, but we can't look at it because we don't have anybody to look at it. And that's basically where it's sat. It's sitting currently on a desk somewhere. And so, yeah, that's, it's an issue. And I think it's something that Surfrider National is, chatting with EPA about how we can kind of get around that on, however that will happen. So, yeah, that's all I got.
Thanks for the update on that. I wasn't sure the status either. So yeah, it sounds like that QA position, QC position is really important and that needs to get fixed. So yeah, good to know. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, and thank you everyone for all of your comments and questions and contributions. And thanks for coming. And yeah, have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Great job, Christina.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Hey, Christina,
Yeah.
how much do those fluorometers cost?
I think I think the PO's for like 13 or 14K.
Ooh, okay. That's what I figured.
Yeah.
And then, so what buoy are you guys talking about putting it on? Just the one outside of the Olive for now?
So we were considering the Hawai'i. Yeah, I think we'll probably start there, see if we can see some signals at the Hawai'i. And if not, I'll probably just I have another, basically a spare CTD that I can deploy wherever I want. So if the Hawai'i if that's not really like the spot for whatever reason, we can move it to any location. I think it would be good to test it in somewhere where we know there's contamination occurring to make sure that we can like capture the signal in situ, and then we can start moving it around to more experimental locations.
And then how are you getting like the data in situ? Is it like, does it have to reach the surface so it can like ping to a satellite?
Right. So for real time, yes. So for real time data, we would basically need to have a cabled setup that would then go to a modem on shore. So all the Kahaluu CTDs are set up like that right now. So they have, they're cabled, they go to a modem, it transmits data real time to the Kahaluu Voyager system. And I think that Kahaluu definitely has a goal of being able to have real time wastewater detection data in Hawaii and also throughout the Pacific. But I think that's further down the road. I think like there's a lot of work to be done with trying to calibrate the sensor, make sure that we can detect signals and that we know what, we can like understand what the signal from the fluorometer means with respect to fecal indicator bacteria or some other type of wastewater indicator that is more established.
The buoys are typically further off coast, right? Like I know like the Hilo Bay one is like outside of the break wall.
Yeah, the buoys are, but there's also a nearshore sensor network, which are all, very, very close to shore, swimming distance. Yeah.
Gotcha. Just like thinking out loud, like, are you familiar with John Burns at UH Hilo? So he has, he does like 3D photogrammetry is like his whole MO. But he's recently, within the last year, he has a live feed of like a reef by, are you familiar with the Kona area on Big Island?
Yes.
So like OTEC, so like by the airport where there's like all the aquaculture. So like up Malka of OTEC, right? There's this whole community that is like full of cesspools. But down like in the water right off the coast of OTEC, he has an already like cabled camera. So that would be, I'm not sure if it's even possible because I don't know how any of this stuff works at all, but there's already a cable there that I'm not sure if it could like add a fluorometer to it, but.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That would be something interesting to look into. I actually used to study OTEC and seawater air conditioning systems. So I've been over to that facility and checked it out. But I didn't know that they had like a cable thing going on over there. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in like finding the appropriate sites to, I kind of have these like ideas of the research that I want to do, but I don't really have sites selected yet. And definitely, thank you for ideas on that. I'm still in the site selection process and thinking about that.
Super expensive because if you think about it, like there's all of these mooring buoys everywhere on the coast that would be great places to attach these things.
Yeah. But I mean, and we have to also think about like, it's super expensive as a one-time purchase, but then I think we need to think about like, how expensive is it to do water quality sampling every week?
It's true.
For years. How long does the sensor last? How often do we need to calibrate it? How expensive is that? So I think there's a little bit of like calculating to do. And I have a feeling it would be like a pretty worthwhile investment. So
that's true.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm used to working with really expensive instrumentation. So 13,000, I'm like, oh, it's a cheap one. It's fine, So, but, my $100,000 CTD was a lot more stressful. So
I flew one of those on the last cruise and we were shooting for 3 feet above the seafloor. And we're like, don't crash it into the bottom. You're like, okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I've heard stories of people like anchoring research vessels with the CTD. It's just like so terrifying.
I love your Sea-Sick report. That's great.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, we need to get that out. So that's like going to be one of our next big social media pushes is to try to like get that out, make sure that people know to report back to that site.
I'm definitely going to mention it to the Keaukaha community, like
cool.
like a Facebook page for the like community association, because they I think in 2018 they actually started themselves recording. They had like a little hui that started recording staff in MRSA in the community because they were concerned that the outfall pipe was that was the source of everybody's getting staph and MRSA there. So if anything, they might have a backlog of data that you can get a hold of.
Yeah, that would be cool too. Yeah, because if people know approximately when and where they got infections, they can just backdate it in the tool too. Yeah. Cool.
Hey, cool.
Well, thank you.
Sorry for keeping you guys.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's okay.
I was very interested by Stephen's comments toward the end that the DOH's monitoring sites don't match up very well with the data on high sewage. And I wondered if that's been presented to DOH or whether it's just something he's noted that haven't gone in yet. Because
I don't know.
I'm sure DOH will be concerned about monitoring where people are actually in the water, as they should. But I worked on this for years, but with Surfrider and DOH, trying to get a meeting of the minds, and it was always a battle. So
yeah, definitely. I don't know the status of I mean I've only talked to Stephen a couple times, so
okay.
I don't really know how much he's talked to DOH about that stuff or anything, but it was an interesting observation. I was like, it's a good point. At Surfrider, we're looking for the contamination, right? Whereas like DOH, I feel like probably is kind of not looking for it, right? Because it causes them problems if they have more positive results. And Surfrider is always like, where's the place with the most cesspools? Like, let's go test there, So kind of it's a little different.
And there ought to be a consensus about where we want to test in order to protect the public and also to protect the corals.
Yeah.
And the ocean. But this shouldn't be a difference of opinion, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your comments. Thanks, Dan, too. Thanks for dropping in. And
Yeah, great presentation, Christy. Thanks.
yeah, thank you.
Great job, Christine.
Thanks, everyone. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. How are you doing, Yoko? Are you good?
Yeah, I haven't
Cool.
heard anything from the pilot project, so no news is good news, I guess.
Yeah, good.
That was awesome. Great job. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I felt like it went really well. Yeah, I feel good about it. I'm gonna go check the surf, I think.
Nice. Yeah. For the recording and YouTube posting, do you want just the presentation or the presentation and the questions or everything? What do you think?
I realize we're still live on Facebook.
Oh yeah, I can stop
Hey,
that.
Facebook. Yeah.
Stop live stream. There you go.
Yeah.